Hi, my name is Precious Nkem. I'm a member of NABANG, and today I'm here with...
Hi, I'm Nneoma.
Yes, so both of us are going to be reading some folk tales. I'll be reading a Nigerian folk tale while Nneoma will be reading a Korean folk tale. So let's start with Nneoma.
Why the green frog croaks. Long ago, the green frog lived with his widowed mother in a small pond. The green frog never listened to his mother, and when she told him to do something, he always did the opposite. If his mother told him to play in the hills, he went to the river. If she told him to go up, he went down. If she told him left, he went right. If she told him this, he did that. The mother frog worried about what she would do with her son. He caused her so much distress and embarrassment. Why can't he be like other frogs, she said to herself. Why can't he respect his elders and do what he's told? She worried about what would happen to him when she was gone. She knew she would have to do something to break his bad habits. Day after day, week after week, the mother frog scolded the green frog and tried to teach him the proper way to behave, but he continued to ignore her and did just as he wished. The mother frog was growing old, and she worried so much that eventually she became sick. But even then, the green frog did not change his ways. Finally, when the mother frog knew she was going to die, she called her son to her side. She wanted a proper burial on the mountain, and since she knew that the green frog would do the opposite of what she told him, she chose her words carefully. I don't have much time to live, she said. When I die, do not bury me on the mountainside. You must bury me on the bank of the river. The green frog looked at her forlornly with his head bowed. Promise me, said the mother frog. You must promise. I promise, said the green frog. 4 days later, the mother frog died, and the green frog was terribly sad. He blamed himself for her death, and he was sorry for all the heartache he had caused her. He knew it was too late to undo all of his past misdeeds, but he could become a good frog for her now. He resolved finally to listen to his mother's instructions. I always did the opposite of what she told me when she was alive, he said to himself. But now I will do exactly as she told me. So even knowing that it was unwise, the green frog buried his mother by the river. And when it rained, he stood watch, praying to heaven that the water would not rise. But when the monsoon rains came that summer, the river rose higher and higher. It flowed over its banks and washed his mother's grave away. The green frog sat in the pouring rain by the river bank, crying and crying for his mother. And that is why, to this day, the green frog cries when it rains.
That's such a nice story, kind of makes sense. My story is about why the tortoise has a cracked shell. And this was gotten from scrollfort.com. So the tortoise was known in the animal kingdom as a very greedy and lazy individual, and everybody avoided him. Whenever it was planting season, he would never leave the house, but when it was time to harvest, he would always look for opportunities to loot others. One day, he walked out of his house and saw Mr. Bird, his neighbor. Mr. Tortoise approached his neighbor and asked where he was coming from. Mr. Bird explained that the bird community always hosted a feast in the clouds once every year, and they were making preparations. The tortoise was instantly interested when he heard there would be a feast, and he asked if he could be invited. Mr. Bird invited Mr. Tortoise to the feast, but there was the problem of actually getting there. The tortoise had no wings. Then, Mr. Bird proposed the suggestion that all the birds donate a feather to make Mr. Tortoise a pair of makeshift wings. On the day of the feast, Mr. Tortoise flew with Mr. Bird to the clouds and sat among the birds at the feast. Being his witty self, the tortoise proposed that they each give themselves nicknames. Each bird named itself, and when it was Mr. Tortoise's turn, he named himself All of Us. When it was time to eat, he asked the host who owned all the food on the table. The bird host answered and said, "Well, it's for all of us." Tortoise then grinned and declared himself the owner of the feast because his name was All of Us. He wolfed down the entire feast, much to the annoyance of the bird, who had been kind enough to give him an invite and make him wings. The birds left the feast in anger one at a time, and when it was time for Mr. Tortoise to leave, he discovered that he was now too heavy for his makeshift wings to carry him. Mr. Tortoise pleaded for more feathers, but the birds ignored him. He then pleaded with his neighbor, Mr. Bird, to at least cushion the earth with all the soft things he could find, so he would not die when he falls from the sky. Mr. Bird assured Mr. Tortoise that he will do as he said. But when Mr. Bird flew back to land, he did no such thing. Trusting Mr. Bird, Mr. Tortoise plummeted down, but instead of soft objects, he crashed on solid ground. However, because of his thick shell, he did not die, but his shell became cracked ever since. This is why the tortoise has a cracked shell.
Okay.
Yes. So, did you notice any similarities between the stories?
Yes. In terms of trust.
Okay.
Yes. Because the birds, they trusted
Yes.
that the tortoise, because by giving him the wing, that means they have the trust.
Yes.
Okay, we can invite this tortoise to our feast without fear. So same as the mother frog too.
Yeah.
So she kind of, in a way, she could not trust her son to do what
she said.
So she tried to, do the opposite, give him the opposite instruction. But in the end,
so it was bad.
Didn't work out. So yes, I think both stories ended in some form of disappointment.
Yeah.
Yes. The story of the frog is just so sad.
It's really sad, really.
Yes.
Extremely. Another similarity that I would say is that with Korean and Nigerian folktale is they give reasons why. For example, now the Korean folktale gave reason why the frog croaks, and then this folktale that I read gave a reason why the tortoise has a broken shell. So I think it's really interesting, and it's a fun way to teach people morals and stuff. So this was fun. Thank you so much for featuring in NABANG video.
Thank you for having me.
See you next time. Bye.
Bye.